All right, everybody, we're going to try to get this thing started. So if you guys could take a seat at one of the tables, that'd be great. If you guys could move around and pick a table. It doesn't have to be the table that you're going to end up at. You know, you guys will get a chance to see them all. So you could just take a seat. Okay, thank you all for coming. This is our third community workshop on Plan Morro Bay, so the city's update of its general plan, local coastal program, and zoning code. And this evening we also have materials out there for the downtown and waterfront strategic plan, which is part of that effort. I want to sort of introduce some of the folks that we have in the room. We have city staff. City staff could all raise your hands. We have Joan over there in red. We have Whitney in the middle. Cindy over there in black. We have Ryan right here. Myself. We have the consultant team. Could you guys raise your hand? Okay, we have Alessandra. We have Lorelei. We have Amy and Tammy over there. And I think we have several of our GPAC members. Could you guys raise your hand as well? GPAC members, you should have yourselves spread out among the tables to help out a little bit. That's good. And I think we had a couple of council members here, if I'm not mistaken. Didn't we have the mayor somewhere? No? So over there, and Marlis, yeah, I thought I saw her here too, so okay, all right. Well, I'm going to turn this over to Lorelei, and she'll get us started. I guess I don't need this, unless you want the...
No, good, thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for spending your evening with us. Here to talk a little bit about the Downtown Waterfront Strategic Plan and the General Plan, which we are calling Plan Morro Bay. So we're here tonight to share a little bit of information about what we've done to date, what we found through our studies, talk a little bit about some of the work we've been doing and get your input on that. We wanted to talk a little bit about these two projects. So the Plan Morro Bay is our larger umbrella of about a 20-plus year vision. So this will get us to 2040. Who do we want to be as a city in 2040? Well, within that effort, there's a lot of parallel projects going on. We're looking at economics. We're looking at traffic. There's other projects being done to look at the Centennial Staircase. So all of these exciting projects kind of will feed into the process of who we want to be. The Downtown Waterfront Strategic Plan that we're talking about tonight, we've done quite a bit of work. We're working on getting a strategy. This is a shorter-term strategy on what our downtown and waterfront should look like and what actions the city should be working on in the next 10 years or so to get us to our envisioned future. So tonight we'll be talking a little bit about the work we've done on the Downtown Waterfront Strategic Plan. We'll talk about some of the opportunity sites for the greater Plan Morro Bay process and have some detailed discussions. So it's a two-part workshop. We'll present those land use alternatives and talk a little bit about that. So as I mentioned, the general plan is our 2040 vision. This is really to bring us into compliance with the Coastal Act, the local coastal plan update, zoning code update. All of these things happen within our process. So there's a lot of things going on. I'll show you kind of how they work together as far as a timeline. As you can see, there's a lot of processes that have been going on and feeding into this process. But here we are in, let's say, it's February. Happy Groundhog's Day. And you'll see here with March right here, we'll be wrapping up the Downtown Waterfront Strategic Plan, which is really looking at a more focused area in detail that will feed into the overall general plan and provide more direction on the land use discussion for the future. And with the schedule looking at this, we'll be wrapping up the entire general plan process through up to December 2018. So I want to go ahead and turn it over to Alessandra to talk a little bit about some of the outreach that we've done to date. This is our third workshop, so she'll tell you a little bit about what we've heard and what you'll be seeing tonight.
Yes, so we've had a number of outreach opportunities and events thus far. So there was a City Voice survey. We've already had 2 community workshops. This is our third. We've also conducted a number of stakeholder interviews as well as focus group discussions. And then, of course, Planning Commission, City Council, and GPAC meetings. GPAC is the General Plan Advisory Committee. And then upcoming, we have an online survey for the land use alternatives. And on your agendas this evening, you'll see a link at the bottom to the online survey. So we'll be getting into this a little bit later when we discuss the activity. There are a number of opportunity sites for Plan Morro Bay and alternatives for each site. And we understand that this is kind of a starting point. You probably won't get a chance to discuss every opportunity site tonight. So we encourage you to go to the online survey and provide input on all of the opportunity sites. And that will be open until February 15th. And then there is also a joint Planning Commission City Council meeting in March. And I will turn it over to Amy.
Good evening, everyone. So the rest of our time together tonight, we are going to introduce these opportunity sites that we've been discussing a little bit so far with the General Plan Advisory Committee, and they, as well as the city staff, have helped us come up with this preliminary set of sites. And the activity that you're going to do at your tables is going to focus on these sites. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the sites up here on the screen so that you have a sense for what your options are tonight in terms of where you would like to focus your time for the discussion. Like Alessandra mentioned, you may not have time to get into a detailed discussion of every site tonight, so we really encourage you to write down your comments on the comment card, send us an email, or take the survey, or do all of the above. So I am not going to take questions on the sites during the presentation. We're going to do that in your groups at the tables, or if you want to come speak with us during the rest of the time. But we don't have a lot of time to get through the presentation, so I'm really hoping to give you an overview here. So this slide shows how we are going to go through this process of taking a look at these sites around the city. And you do have on each of your tables an overview map of all of these sites. We will look at that on the presentation as well. And we're at sort of the beginning of this arrow now. We have, as I mentioned, begun discussing these sites and getting input from the GPAC. And then as we go along in the next couple of months, we're going to take all of your input, and some of the sites may stay on the list. We may end up adding other sites if we hear that we've missed some areas. And then eventually these areas of change or sites in the city will be part of the draft land use plan in the General Plan and Local Coastal Plan. So just to start with where we are now, this is your existing general plan land use map. These are the categories of allowed land uses throughout the city. I know it's hard to see the details there, but on the left is the legend, and generally the yellowish colors are where things are residential. The reddish is commercial. There's some mixed use, that's light blue. Open space and parks and agriculture is generally green, and then industrial is generally purple. So this is where we're starting from. We don't anticipate this completely changing at the end of this process, but like I said, we're here tonight to focus in on some areas that we've heard input on so far that may change either in the near future or throughout the life of this plan. So on the overview map on your table, which is right here, that's what it looks like. There are 10 sites and 4 study areas. The sites are within the city limits, except for one, which is the proposed site for the water reclamation facility. We've included that one on our list because it has a pretty high likelihood that it will become part of the city if that project gets approved. But we are focusing on 6 of those sites tonight in your exercise. The other areas are one of them is the downtown. So the downtown and waterfront strategic plan area is not something that we're focusing on in this group exercise tonight, but we will get into that before the end of the process. And then several of the other sites that are on that map we aren't actually proposing any changes to the land use. We might be considering some policy recommendations in the plan for those areas, but we don't have questions about land use changes for you. So that's sites G, H, and I on the map. So we won't have a table for those three. So here is that overview map. There are the 4 study areas, and they're all outside the city limits. You see the very large purple one with the yellow in the middle. That's what we're calling Study Area 1, and that does include a lot of the Chevron properties. Study Area 2 is along Highway 41 and Little Morrow Creek Road. And then Study Area 3 is below that and does include that proposed water reclamation facility site. Study Area 4 is in the Choro Valley. All the other sites, like I said, are within the city and are generally smaller. So fairly quickly, like I said, I'm going to go through this. I know you're going to have a lot of questions, so we look forward to getting into that in our smaller discussions. But the first site, A, is the Dynegy Power Plant site. And each of the tables, as well as what you're going to see up here, has the existing land use on the left. And then if there is one, or sometimes there are 2 proposed alternatives, are there on the right. So in this case, we would be proposing that a lot of the site changed from, it's all industrial currently, so it would change to some visitor serving uses as well as mixed use, and then some of the area would be retained as a public or institutional use. That would be the PG&E substation and the triangle lot at the bottom there. So here we have a photo of the existing site at the top, and then a conceptual photo at the bottom. This is not in Morro Bay, but what if there were visitor serving uses on this site, what that might look like. So site B is a little further north. This is the site of the existing wastewater treatment plant, as well as some surrounding uses, motels, the RV park, and a few other things, the former Flippo site. We have 2 possible alternatives that we're showing here. The one in the middle there would have a lot of recreation and park space closer to the ocean. That's the green. Both of the alternatives would show Lila Kaiser Park becoming actually designated as park and open space, and not as industrial, which is what it is now. The second alternative on the right would have more commercial uses and less recreation. So if you want to discuss this site, you can join that table and talk about the pros and cons there. And here again are an existing photo of the wastewater treatment plant, a conceptual photo, I think, from Cloisters of a park, and then some visitor serving commercial, a bike shop down at the bottom. Site C is the proposed site for the WRF, and the existing general plan use is in the county, so it's agricultural. If it did become the WRF, then it would be designated public institutional. So we've got a photo of what the site looks like now, and then conceptual rendering of the plant for the alternative. Site E is a pretty large site. It is the corridor that runs almost to the city limit down to Highway 41 along North Main Street. And this is currently designated several different things, but it does include a lot of mixed use. And the vision that's being proposed by the alternative for this one is to have more neighborhood serving commercial uses. So there's a mix of uses on the ground uses, so what's actually there now. As I'm sure you all know, there are some areas that do have commercial that serves the neighborhood, but some areas there's a lot of residential right along Main Street. So this alternative would propose that we encourage more neighborhood serving commercial. So here we have an existing photo of that corridor of some of the residential area, and then we have a possible photo of what some commercial could look like. Site F is the Tri-W site, that's inside the city limits. So this site is controlled by a voter initiative, Measure H, and any changes to the land use on this site would require another vote of the citizens. But it's something that we're asking you to consider, get your feedback on. So on the left there is what it is currently designated under the general plan, and on the right we're showing some additional residential, so that's the orange. We're also asking you to give us your feedback on whether it might make sense to cluster where the development is allowed closer to the proposed WRF site so that we're not kind of hopscotching the development in that area. So we're looking for your feedback on that. And because the existing landscape up there is grazing land or undeveloped land, we put in a couple photos that are not the actual parcels, but these are the uses that are currently allowed there if it was developed at the top. And then at the bottom is a photo where there would be some additional higher density residential allowed. Okay, Site J is back on the other side of the highway. This is where there are the two shopping centers with the grocery stores, Cookie Crock and Albertsons. And so mostly this is along Quintana Road. We are proposing one change to the land use here, and that would be on the left, you can see that light blue there, that's mixed use, and that's on the Cookie Crock shopping center currently. We're proposing that that be changed to commercial. So far the input we've heard doesn't, we have not heard that there's a lot of desire for residential right there. So that's one change. And then another thing we're looking for your input on is ways to encourage, and this might not be by a general plan land use designation change, it might be the zoning, which is going to be part of a later part of this process. How to encourage more commercial along this area that actually has walk-in traffic. And so we were interested in your thoughts on that. So again, here we have the existing shopping center at the top, and we have a representative photo of some commercial that someone might walk in off the street to. And then that's it for the inside the city limit areas, and then we have the 4 study areas. So the first one is study area 1, and like I mentioned, this is at the north and east end of the city, in between the city and Cayucas, and a lot of this land is owned by Chevron, and they are considering selling it. So we've heard quite a bit of input so far on this area, and there are a couple options here that we're showing, and we're definitely looking for any other options that you would like to discuss tonight. The existing land use in the county is agriculture and a little bit of recreation. There are a few existing residences in this area, but for the most part, it is the former Chevron operations as well as open space and ag. Alternative 1 would maintain a lot of that area either for agriculture or open space. It varies depending on if you're in that hatched area or if you're outside of that. We're really looking for your input on this, but I believe this particular drawing shows it as open space. The area that is inside the hatching that is in the darker color would be designated agriculture within the city, and that does allow 1 residential unit per parcel. So the idea there is that some very low density residential, along with some agricultural uses if the owner wanted them, could go there. The second alternative allows a little bit more development. It would allow additional agricultural 1 unit per parcel on some more parcels. And then closest to the ocean, there's a dark red color, and that would be some visitor serving commercial. So that is generally what we're going to have you discuss tonight, but we've already discussed this in several meetings, and we understand that there are variations on that. So please give us your thoughts. And we have a couple of those questions specific to this study area here. So should it even be considered to become part of the city or to be in the city's area of interest? And how much and how should that happen? So here's a photo that represents that, 1 unit per parcel. This particular photo would be with some horses. And then at the bottom, that shows a hotel or motel if there was some visitor serving commercial allowed. We also want to know if this area is not developed, if you have a preference for leaving it in agriculture versus open space. And the difference there would be that would be even more protected. If it was in open space, there would be a much more limited set of uses. Okay, and then our last 3 study areas are all currently in the county as well. Study area 2 along Highway 41 and Little Morrow Creek Road is currently designated agriculture under the county's general plan. And this alternative has that being designated as open space and recreation if it was included either in the city's planning area, which means the city has an interest in this area, but not any land use designation. So they don't have decision-making authority like the county. Or one other alternative, if someone wants to make that their comment, would be to actually put this into the city's sphere of influence. And then we have the same proposal for both study areas 3 and 4. They both are currently agriculture under the county, and for alternative 1 would become part of the city's planning area and be open space recreation. So that again, study area 3 is behind Casa de Flores, and is that lower right-hand corner is where the WRF is proposed. Study area 4 in the Choro Valley runs along the creek and the floodplain there. Has several different uses on it. A lot of it is in active agriculture. So it is agriculture now under the county and open space and recreation under alternative 1. So here are some questions to think about for study areas 2 through 4. Should we leave them as they are now as part of the county? If the city took an interest in them, should the city or a conservation organization pursue purchase of all or part of these areas? Or should the city include them in their planning area but retain them as agriculture? So again, you can have different answers for the different study areas or parts of the study areas. And I am going to turn it over to Alessandra to get us started on our activities. But do we want to have them move now? So at this point, now that you're familiar with the different areas that we're looking at, if we are going to give you the opportunity to switch to different tables throughout the rest of the time, but if you have a favorite opportunity site or study area that you want to start at, if you could get up now and move to that table. Yes, sir. So under the city's land use designation, open space recreation is a very, it doesn't allow very much. So it allows, I believe, passive recreation, which would be like trails and that sort of thing, but it doesn't allow other development. Not if they weren't redeveloping. That's my understanding. Yeah. Okay.
Are you all at your respective tables? Okay, I just want to explain the activity before you get into the discussion. I know that everyone is really excited. Okay. Sorry, I'm going to use the obnoxious bell. Okay. All right, so a couple of ground rules. Please let each person share one at a time. Be respectful of other people's time and of their perspectives. And you might want to silence your cell phones. And all right, so as you know, each table has 1 to 2 opportunity sites or study areas assigned for discussion. We know that you're probably not going to be able to get to every table or every opportunity site tonight, but I will ring the bell every 15 minutes or so to remind you that you might want to switch tables. But definitely feel free to move around throughout the next hour or so and join a couple of the conversations. The table facilitator has a number of maps, and they'll be once again introducing the site. And then they will lead you through a discussion of the various alternatives, and they'll write down comments, ideas, and such. And then at 7:30, we'll bring the entire room back together again and do a report back. So every table will report back a couple of key takeaways from their discussion so that the whole group can hear what was talked about. And a few things to consider when you're looking at these sites. So what is the current use on the site, and is it appropriate? What are your thoughts on the proposed alternatives? You know, what's good, what's not so good? Does the site have the potential to be used in a different way? And do you have any other ideas for how this site could be transformed? Oh, and I'll get to that when we get back. So I'll leave these questions up here for you to think about. Yes?
So there is going to be a trained professional at each table to prevent anarchy from breaking out?
Yes, there should be. All right, and carry on. Thank you. Okay, everyone. We're going to start wrapping things up. If you could sit down at a table or one of the tables you've been sitting at, we're going to let everyone report back on what they discussed. All right. Thank you. We had a lot of great discussions going on. Okay. Okay, review. All right, so we're just going to go around and we're going to let either the facilitator or a participant at each table share some of the key discussion points or takeaways from their discussion of their study area or opportunity site, so the rest of the group can kind of hear what was being discussed at some of the other tables they might not have had a chance to join. Lorelei, I will let you go first. Okay.
Okay. We had Site E, which is the North Main Corridor. You want to, Vanna White, would you like to hold up one side? Thank you. This is Vanna here. So generally speaking, we spent a lot of time talking specifically about this site right here, which is currently designated high-density residential. So very colorful conversation revolving around the San Jacinto intersection because it is currently a very difficult one to access at 8:30 in the morning when Del Mar School is getting in. So great access. It's a great high point. We started with that. But generally, people felt that the high-density residential was too high. We didn't have the infrastructure in place to support that. And people also mentioned that having that would just exacerbate the issues at not only San Jacinto, but also at Yerba Buena. So we talked about low density or medium density. And there's concerns because I'm sure that property is probably looking at the highest and best use. But the group discussed that medium density residential is probably preferred. Some of the ideas that could happen there are lower trip generating uses, such as a senior facility, some sort of assisted living, co-op housing, perhaps some sort of affordable component to that as well. We also heard that if anything happens there, we need to make sure we understand the intersection impacts and improve that intersection. When that site is also developed, we want to make sure that there's access to Del Mar Park through the site, and that it also respects the 50-foot buffer along the riparian corridor, which is ESHA habitat. We need an increase in transit to serve that area and the new medium-ish density residential we discussed. Now getting to the entire corridor, 2-story maximum is how people were feeling it should develop, nothing 3-story or more. Some of the other important uses that could occur here that we envision for the future are medical and dental offices. So while alternative one is looking at neighborhood commercial, people generally felt that other uses might have been a better option, meaning medical, dental offices, things that can serve some of the senior health facilities, a daycare, a private school, live-work units, even artist lofts, something where if you are going to have residential above, you are having the downstairs connected, because a lot of those are currently vacant on the upper floors, and some of the bottom floors are struggling as well. So 20 years in the future, it's a possibility, but we want to make sure that the residential is integrated into the commercial use on the ground floor. Thank you. Who's next?
So I had a little discussion with a couple people regarding the wastewater treatment plant. I don't know if you all remember. So the general consensus was the first alternative, which keeps Kaiser Park as open space and then also converts the wastewater treatment plant to open space. And one of the other issues we talked about was making sure that we keep the open space where the flood zone is. So keep an eye on the flood zone area. And then, so one of the issues we talked about was the contaminated soils. So make sure that the soils are cleaned up prior to development, if that's an issue. Another option we talked about is the visitor serving commercial near the school, to have that be used as something related to the schools. So whether that means the school acquiring those lands or some other use that's related to the schools. And I think that might be about it. One of the issues is if we're taking out all this industrial, is if the city is going to replace the industrial land use somewhere else in the city. So that's something else we talked about. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to turn it over to Tammy to discuss Site A.
Yeah. So I had the Dynegy power plant site, and a few of you have had time to talk with me, so, oh, yay, that's better. So we have one land use now, as we talked about, coastal dependent industrial. There's a proposal for discussion of changing it to apply at least 3 different designations. So we had a lot of good discussion, and there was a cautionary flag raised that perhaps we should consider a specific plan requirement or a plan development rather than go ahead and identify the uses now to allow a little more certainty going forward. So it was interesting that we had a little good planning chat about that. There is support from everyone for a mixed use on the site, and there's a lot of great ideas about what types of uses would be best there, and as well as support for the institutional, allowing the Maritime Museum and the Pacific Wildlife Rescue and Rehab Center to expand and continue, and then to support future uses as long as the mixed use on that side of the parcel allows expansion and integration of those 2 institutional uses with new ones. So perhaps a cultural center, more nature-based activities for our visitors. So definitely retaining that on site. There was discussion as to whether we should add the visitor serving banned there since that's not its own parcel. So we had a little discussion about that. But in general, visitor serving uses on this site are a good idea. We did have some agreement on the group to add an open space designation where the creek is now and where we have natural areas to ensure protection of that going forward. And that for the mixed use, there is support for residential there, provided it's affordable, medium density, multifamily housing that isn't for out of reach for the types of folks who live here and who would come for the new jobs. And also the mixed uses on sites need to support, ideally they would have studios, live workspaces mixed in with the single family or mixed or multi-family residential and visitor serving uses. And then we had some big ideas. I think we hear this a lot about preserving part of the stacks in the plant for perhaps an electricity or museum, or just to keep the iconic architecture in Morro Bay, because otherwise you wouldn't know where you were. But besides of the rock, yeah. So, and then we have some technical questions that are going to go back to the team. So, Amy?
Okay, so I think study area 1 ended up having 3 groups. We started as one group at this table and we split. So I'm going to report back some, and then I'm going to let Chair Teft report back some. And we had a variety of input, so I'm not going to be able to cover every single comment. One thing I heard from quite a few people is they want more time and information on this area. So I'm sending that to the city. In particular, getting into what's allowed under all of these categories really specifically, and also what's allowed in the county, because it's not always the same, even if the names are the same of the categories. And also what specifically happens in the annexation or sphere of influence process. And we did get into that somewhat, but I think getting even more into the details on that would be helpful for some folks to know how to give direction on this. We did have a question why some parcels, for example, the Rigetti parcel, weren't included in the sphere of influence, and so we'll take that into consideration. Choose development potential. If there is development allowed in this area, choose where that can happen wisely. We talked about landslide hazard. We also talked about protection of views. A couple people mentioned that they feel very comfortable leaving this in the county, and that they feel like the way that things are functioning in this area now is fine with them, and they think that will continue if it's left in the county. We heard that people want to keep the dog beach, and also that if possible, we should include goals and policies in this plan, and even if necessary, change of land use in order to further the connector bike path between Morro Bay and Cayucas. There are concerns, or people want more understanding of what it would really cost if this area or a lot of this area was preserved or put into open space and recreation. Is that really feasible financially? And we also talked about the benefits of grazing in terms of fire danger, and so would we want to lose those benefits? And then I think the final comment that was sort of unique was that by potentially allowing visitor serving commercial under Alternative 2 in the coastal area there could be leapfrog development. So I'm going to pass it over to Chair Teft.
Okay. We were fortunate enough to have at our table a couple of representatives from Chevron. So we kind of talked a little bit about the company's goals and the city's goals, and there's I guess what it boiled down to is that this acreage carries with it a certain development potential, which means a certain economic potential. And the folks from Chevron indicated that they were quite flexible in looking at ways to relocate that development potential that in a way that would be most acceptable to the city, as well as conservation organizations. And doing that then would allow conservation of large parts of the property, perhaps without the economic issues that would otherwise happen. And we talked about some potential sites where that relocation could be done. And I feel like we had about 1% of the conversation that we actually need to have to going forward. But that's kind of where we were at.
Thank you. I'm actually I think I'll go to the next or the last study area 1 and then come back to Joan. Okay.
All right, so we created the second group about halfway or 3/4 of the way through. And so some of the key points that folks were interested in was weren't real interested in having visitor serving uses in the red area there. Maybe limited use as a campground potentially, but definitely no hotel or something like that. We're interested in having allowing access to the land or having access to the property in various ways that could allow for other uses out there, which would be food production or water collection, things like that. Wanted the development to be very limited in the area that we were talking about for consideration in the sphere. Certainly not greater than what's already allowed under the county's ag designation. Preference was no development. And then really the desire to preserve the backdrop to the city and to preserve the beach area and public access to the beach area was important to the folks that were sitting at our table. So that's pretty much the extent of it.
So at this table, we looked at study areas 2 through 4, and the general dialogue was virtually identical for all 3 study areas. There was a general consensus regarding no expansion of the city limits, so no annexation into the city, and that these areas should remain under county control. There was some opposition to even the expansion of the sphere of influence. And everyone across the board wanted it to stay agriculture. Everyone who sat at my table was pretty vocal about keeping it ag land. So preserving the soil, it's some of the best soil in our area. So the importance and of appropriate stewardship of the land and protection of wildlife. And overwhelmingly no development whatsoever. Please, please, please. With many exclamation points.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Whitney. And you actually have C and J. Let's do C. Okay, C first.
I'm getting dizzy. Okay. So this table we looked at site C and J. This is site C being the quite possible new water reclamation facility site for the city of Morro Bay. The general consensus was, given that is really what's decided on, that alternative 1, redesignating the site for public institutional use to accommodate the water treatment facility and annexing it into the city makes a lot of sense. So that was a pretty easy one. I guess that's why I got another site. The second site is J along Quintana. Okay, there we go. So the 2 shopping centers, the Cookie Crock Shopping Center, the Albertson Center, the old elementary school that is now just being used as school and some various other uses there, the field out. I'm going to point in the wrong direction now, I'm sure. Just there, thank you. And where we're sitting right now, for instance, the thing people mostly agreed on is the need to have some more high-density housing, and that somewhere in this area might be good. both at the as a sort of redevelopment of the elementary school site, possibly eventually, and also on the field with the idea that that recreational use might be relocated either as part of redevelopment of the existing wastewater treatment plant, the Morro Bay power plant, something like that. So that seemed interesting. And then there were just a couple of what I thought were some good questions. One of them had to do with the notion that there'd be high-density residential somewhere in this area that might support the commercial along Quintana, and so that kind of brought up the where are people walking from actually, how do we improve those pedestrian connections? Another question that I thought was worth repeating is in considering the need for infill high-density residential housing, we probably want to also look at is there any need to expand, for instance, this community center. Is there any conflict there? How would you sort of balance those two things out? Regarding the whole mixed use at the Cookie Crock site, no strong opinions there. People seem to feel like it's been a commercial use for a really long time, and likely is just it's logical for it to continue in that way. I think that pretty much sums it up. Not terribly controversial at this table.
Yes. Thank you. And of course.
Thank you, Alessandra. So I had Tri-W site, and this is a little unique site because any land use alternatives are subject to Measure H. And so I'll just stand up for a moment here and show you that. I had an artist at my site, and as you'll see on the left side of the map, the red is crossed out. And so I had, what I heard from a couple of people is that Measure H eliminated the commercial visitor serving land uses that are along the freeway. And so that, in fact, the left image you see that is pink, which is district commercial, that is the only allowable use there, and that the rest of the site should be shown as open space, according to Measure H. The reason that the public is seeing it as red right now, and that's how staff has shown it, is because the 1997 land use plan and our certified zoning ordinance were certified in a manner that is not consistent with Measure H. So there was some concern that be corrected, and corrected now, because it's misleading to look at alternative one land use, and it looks like you have red visitor serving on the left and it's staying the same on the right, when in fact there is no currently allowed visitor serving land use, only district commercial. So with that out of the way, we said, okay, knowing that this would require Measure H voter approval, would you be comfortable with, or what do you think about options for transforming the site? And what I heard is that, grab my notes, some of our key takeaways. Two key takeaways were that this is an important site to revisit as an opportunity for economic development in the community, economic expansion, and there are very few available commercial lots that could do some viable commercial development. And so whether it is district commercial or not, there seemed to be no strong feeling for visitor serving, but district commercial, yes, and some kind of commercial development that would work. On the other hand, I also heard citizens say, no, let's leave Measure H the way it is. The voters have spoken. No changes at all, except for the 13 acres of district commercial that Measure H approved. And our our economic support should go to the downtown and the North Morro Bay businesses before we do anything with this Tri-W site. And that we need to support the community by supporting those two economic districts. And then the last key takeaway that I heard at this table was in regards to the residential land use option. And a little bit split. Initially, what I heard was no residential, let's make it all commercial. And then toward the end of the focus group activity, there were some other citizens that said possibly, yes, favoring residential if it's high density and it's on the southern side, or possibly residential if it's strongly affordable housing or workforce housing, or housing that families can buy, and not housing that is going to be $1 million homes that no one who lives here can afford anyway. So, and I think those are the key takeaways. Yeah, that's it, those 3 categories.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Does anyone, actually I should ask, does anyone have any comments or questions on any of these takeaways or discussion points? Yes.
Actually, on this one, the district, or do you want to wait for the microphone? I'm sorry. Okay, the district commercial versus the visitor serving commercial. Is district commercial like shopping centers, or what? I mean, I'm having a little trouble distinguishing between those two.
Sorry, Cindy.
So visitor serving commercial is like the name implies. It's not going to be a barbershop, for instance. It's going to be hotels. A gas station could be visitor serving. It's going to be retail. It could be retail. It could be gift shops. It could be any of those variety of activities. District commercial, what you're going to see is that could also be retail. It could be shopping center. That could be district commercial also. It could be a more range of, and not so much pedestrian-oriented retail, which you would see that in the neighborhood commercial. And that was the other comment that I got from the group and that I heard, is that this area doesn't lend itself to pedestrian-oriented commercial, but it is important to have the type of commercial that supports the people who live here, that community. So hopefully I answered your question. Visitor serving is intended to be tourist-oriented commercial. There is some overlap in the commercial land uses. District commercial is a little bit more auto-oriented, but it's also retail. It's just not expressly serving visitors. Yeah, there you go. And they're both retail, but one is expressly land uses that serve visitors. Visitors do have to shop at Albertsons.
Something else that's important for this planning process too is that visitor serving commercial is important to the coastal commission and in the coastal zone, and district commercial is not.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I just want to say thank you to Chevron for being outstanding, giving us the opportunity to have a chance within this community to be a part of this instead of selling it off to someone else. So that's, I mean, obviously it's here, but you have choice in that. So I just want to put that gratitude out there, and we look forward to helping to heal the soil. We can do that. Soil harmonics, we're about community, and we need to tighten the old indigenous ways, but different, a mix, and really bring people together. And we know that in our country. We know that in our own lives. We know we need to feel more connected, and so we need a new way of doing things. And so I'm looking forward to getting to know you guys, and really, or we are, and thank you again. So.
Thank you. That was a very nice note to possibly end on. Does anyone have anything else before we talk about next steps? Okay. Oh, I think it's required for the. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Carol Truesdale, a resident since '95, and I want to thank Scott Graham and his staff and people here. They were very informative to the questions I had, because I'm not a land use planner. I'm just a regular citizen like the rest of us, and we hold our earth clear. But thank you very much for everything you did.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone for taking time out of their Thursday evening to be here and provide input. oops, sorry, I'm just gonna. Okay, so again, this is just kind of a starting point for this discussion. I'd like to encourage everyone to visit the Plan Morro Bay website for more opportunities to provide input, and specifically the survey. So again, you probably didn't get to discuss all of the opportunity sites or study areas tonight, but if you go to the survey link, and it's on your agendas as well, so you don't have to worry about scribbling this down. You can just bring your agenda card home with you, or go to Plan Morro Bay, and the link is also there. You can fill out the online survey to provide your input on all of the opportunity sites. And then if you want to stay involved, we hope you will. The next GPAC meeting is on February 16th. And then there's also a Planning Commission City Council study session on March 28th. And again, there's the Morro Bay or Plan Morro Bay link at the bottom. And I think, thank you. So that wraps everything. Oh, sorry, nope. Oh, there's one more slide.
Well, good. That's exactly what I was going to say. I just want to remind everybody that the GPAC has a public comment period at every meeting. And we would love, if any of you come up with some brainstorms about any of the things that were discussed tonight, please come to the GPAC and let us hear about it. We welcome your input.
Thank you. Oh.
Thank you. And the GPAC meeting is hereby formally adjourned to our next regularly scheduled meeting on February 16th.